Case down here to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
Kerry. All right, Mr. Brennan, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Roberts.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to this jury?
Hi, my name is Kerry Roberts.
Ms. Roberts, where do you live?
I live in Canton, Massachusetts.
How long have you lived in the area for?
I was raised in the Boston area, North Shore, South Shore. I went to high school in Braintree and I moved to Canton about 12 years ago.
Do you live alone?
No, I live with my husband and 2 children.
How old are your children presently, this day?
My son is 13, my daughter's 15.
Do you work?
Yes, I do.
Without identifying specifically where, can you share with us a little bit about what you do?
I'm an executive assistant and I've been with my company for 18 years.
Ma'am, if you could just move the microphone just a tiny bit closer. Thank you very much. You have 2 children, you're
Yes.
married,
Yes,
and you live in the area.
yes.
I want you to tell us whether you know a person by the name of John O'Keefe.
Yes, I do.
Would you be willing to share with us when you first met Mr. O'Keefe?
Well, I went to high school with John in Braintree. He played soccer, I played soccer, so we probably hung out in middle school, but we went to 2 different middle schools. And then I hung out with him more in high school. He was a year older than me. His sister was 2 years older than him in school, and his brother was younger, so at some point I was in high school with each of his siblings.
Did you at some point become friendly with John O'Keefe?
Yes.
Could you tell us about
I wanted to jump his bone.
That was the problem with Karen's all these interviews she did. She literally said in that interview they just pulled, I know I said I hit him. So all those questions her defense team just put to that firefighter
It's
wiped
just
out.
No self-snitching. Oh,
This is the problem. Why decent lawyers will always tell you when you engage them, shut the hell up.
I think that she's been told that, and she's done it anyway. That's the type of person.
Decent lawyer. See, this is where the bit about being a decent lawyer comes in, because a decent lawyer would have walked off going, nah, I quit. If you ain't going to listen to me on this basic principle, I'm done. I'm out.
They did the opposite and said, well, I'll sit with you just to make sure that you don't really fuck up.
Yeah, and then she really fucked up anyway.
Yeah.
It's
what it is. You can't stop her from doing it.
Defense.
She's paying for it, so they just get paid a little bit longer.
Yeah, but that's why they're bad lawyers, is because they put up with it, and a decent lawyer won't. A decent lawyer, you're told, either you follow my advice or I'm out the door. You can go find somebody else.
Such a big case.
Yeah, because the alternative is you get so damaged by it. It destroys your own reputation.
about that?
When his sister Kristen passed away, and then her husband Steve passed away, John, they lived in my neighborhood. John took over for the children and moved into my neighborhood as well.
When John took in the children, did you offer any assistance or any help to him?
Yes, when John, before John was even going to take over, he was going to potentially move in with his brother-in-law and the children to help out. And then when his brother-in-law passed away unexpectedly, John took over, and I jumped in because I was a friend from high school that he knew, and he had all kinds of people helping, but he sort of said, I'm going to lean on you for right now because I know you best. And and I knew his parents
How
and
many
his
so
siblings, and so
special?
I introduced him to my husband, and we jumped in. It was, preschool drop-offs, preschool pickups for my son and his son, and just from then until the time of his death, we were just friends, very close friends, and we hung out all the time. The children hung out all the time, and he was the emergency contact list at my children's school to call if something had happened.
Were you close friends before he took over the care of the children?
No, I wasn't very close friends with him then.
Were you close with his family before he took over the care of the children?
No.
Did your friendship with him develop after he took care of the children?
Yes.
You mentioned you have a son,
Yes, I do.
and is your son the same age as John's nephew?
Yes.
Was there any common interests or activities that engaged your son with John's nephew?
Well, they went to in-home daycare together. They went to preschool together. They went to pre-K together. Then they went to elementary school. They played baseball together since they were T-ball. My son plays hockey. Patrick tried hockey. He didn't like that. So we spent a lot of time at the baseball fields together.
As you spent a lot of time together and had mutual care of children, did your relationship with him grow closer?
Yes.
And can you share a little bit with the jury how close you became?
Well,
I used to
John
babysit my kid.
bachelor, and he didn't have any children of his own. So when he took over for the children, he sort of, leaned on us to kind of guide him and, all the things to do if there's someone has a headache and, if there's an ear infection or, he had his mom and dad also helping as well, but I was right up the street. So if I would go to BJ's, I would call and say, can I grab you anything?
See?
If I would go to Walmart, any of the places I would go, I would call and say, do you need anything? Can I help you? Can I grab something for you? And he did the same. We just sort of all chipped in, helped.
As your friendship grew, could you tell us a little bit about your relationship with John?
John and I were very close. We spoke on the phone and hung out. He became very close with my husband as well because he was right down the street. But we just had a friendship, a very close friendship.
Tell us about the day-to-day activities and how you would try to assist John with the children.
Well, John moved across town. I don't remember when. I forget how many. Patrick, I think, was in 5th grade or 4th grade. And I would take him home with me on Wednesdays because John would be working. So it was more of a, if he was at my house and my daughter needed a ride the other side of town, he would take her with him. We were just very close friends. We did a lot together. We would do baseball tournaments together. We would have drinks together. We would, all the things friends do.
As you grew closer to John and helped with the children, did you become closer with his family?
Yes.
And who specifically did you become closer with?
Mrs. O'Keefe and Mr. O'Keefe, his parents, and Paul, I would see from time to time, but not a lot. He doesn't live in Canton. But Mr. and Mrs. O'Keefe would be there all the time to help as well. And Mr. O'Keefe would take my son and Patrick, the nephew, out to Dunkin' Donuts all the time.
Can you tell us a little more about the collective effort of other people, including his family, helping John raise these children?
There was a lot of us that jumped in to help. It was not just me. There was a lot of Kaylee's friends' parents that jumped in and helped for Kaylee, his niece, and Patrick. There was a lot of us that helped out with Patrick. All of the community all came together to help him because there was this guy that just lost his sister and brother-in-law, and he stepped in to take care of his 2 kids, and he didn't really know what he was doing at first, but he got the hang of it pretty quickly.
You have a son that shared a lot of interests with his nephew.
Yes.
He also had a niece.
Yes.
Did you spend more time helping with his nephew or with his niece?
With his nephew.
Were there other people in the community you knew of who spent more time helping with his niece?
Yes.
And who was that?
Jen McCabe.
Did you know Jen McCabe?
I had met her once. John got a discount at Reebok, so he would take the kids. Well, he would take anyone with kids up with him to get shoes, like sneakers for back to school or whatever. So one day he did take Jen and I up to Reebok, but other than that, I never talked to her on the phone. I never saw her out. Her children are older than mine, so we never really crossed paths.
As it relates to the night of January 29, 2022, how much earlier was it that John took you out with the children and Miss McCabe out with her children to get sneakers? How many years before
Oh, years, like 6 or 7 maybe.
that? And from that time you met Jen McCabe in the years past, did you ever spend time with her again before January 29th, 2022?
No, I did not. I didn't know her.
Were you friends with her?
I was not.
Did you speak on the phone with her?
No, I did not.
So other than that one meeting, you were strangers?
Yep, that was the only time. I knew her. I knew of her. She has 4 girls, but I didn't know her.
At some point, as you were part of John's life, did you learn that he was dating a person by the name of Karen Reed?
Yes, I did.
And do you see that person here in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Could you point her out and describe an article of clothing that she's wearing?
She has a black suit jacket seated at the front table.
When did you first become familiar or know about Miss Reed?
July, I think it was, of 2020. John, we were having people over, and so I invited him, and he said, I'm going to bring Karen over. And I was like, I don't know who that is, but okay. He assumed I knew because he had been dating her for a little bit, but it was COVID, so we didn't see him very often during that time. So Karen came over that night.
And this is early 2020?
I think it was summer, so I think it was around June or July.
Briefly, just tell us a little bit about where and the circumstances of meeting John and Karen for the first time.
They came over to my house and we hung out on the back porch, had some drinks, there was music, kids were around, just a nice, normal summer night. We had other people over as well.
Over the next coming months, did you become more familiar with the defendant?
Yes,
Did you see her more often?
yes.
And could you generally describe to the jury how you learned more of her and saw her more often?
She would take care of the kids a lot, mainly, well, not mainly Patrick, but not mainly Kaylee either. She helped out a lot with the kids. So if we were at baseball, she would come to all the baseball games, or she would drop off or pick up my son or Patrick if they were going to the golf course or the driving range.
Would you see her during events with your son and John's nephew?
Yes, we did baseball tournaments, and
So when you go to baseball tournaments, would that be away, an overnight type trip?
one of them was down the Cape.
How often would you spend time with John and the defendant?
Not that often together, but John would stop by himself. My husband would go out more with John, but I didn't spend much time with the two. Not a lot of time outside of the baseball field.
Did you become friends with the defendant?
We were friendly.
Did you ever spend time alone to go out or socialize?
I did not.
Would you see her when you would pick up or drop off kids, or she would pick up or drop off kids?
Yes.
Did you ever speak to her on the phone?
Yes.
In relation to what?
Corresponding with the kids, pick up, drop off, mainly Ryan and Patrick. Not about Kaylee.
Did you ever spend any important dates or times or holidays with John and Miss Reed?
No.
I want you to take us ahead to January 28th, 2022.
Okay.
On January 28th, 2022, do you remember that day?
Yes.
Generally, what do you remember about the day of January 28th, 2022?
There was a blizzard coming, and it was my daughter's friend's birthday. So we were going to be going out celebrating that night, but we did it on the early side because there was a blizzard coming.
What was your plan for that evening?
We went bowling. We got dinner, then we went bowling, and then I came home because I wanted to be in before the snow started.
Had you communicated in any way with John that day?
Yes. He texted me. My son had an issue at school. Patrick had been dismissed, I think, for a doctor's appointment. So he did text me to see how my son was doing.
Did you simply text, or did you get a chance to speak to him that day?
I believe we just texted.
Did you go out that night after bowling?
No, I did not.
Was your husband home?
Yes,
Did he go out that night?
he did. He went out with John.
And do you know where he was planning on going?
They went to McCarthy's, a bar in Canton Center.
Had you been to McCarthy's before?
Yes.
Can you just briefly describe what McCarthy's is?
It's a restaurant bar. There's a large bar in the middle, the seating on the left and the right. It's right in the center of town.
Do you remember about what time your husband went out?
I do not remember exactly. I don't know if I got home and then he went out, or if he was already gone when I got home. I don't remember, but it was he went out around the same time that I arrived home, which was on the earlier side.
How many times had you been to John's home, would you say, over the past couple of years before this night?
Oh, many.
Many times?
Many
Were
times.
you familiar with the house and the driveway?
Yes.
May I approach you on?
Yes.
Should I return to the podium and ask the questions?
You
now?
can ask them from there.
Thank you. Ma'am, I'd ask you to take a look at that photo in front of you. Do you recognize what is in that photo?
That is John's house.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of how his house looks?
Yes, it is.
I'd like to move this into evidence, please.
Okay, any objection?
No objection.
May I publish to the jury, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. You can take it down. I've shown you a second photo. Do you recognize what's in that photo?
Yes, that's John's driveway.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of how John's driveway appears?
Yes, it is.
I'd move that into evidence.
No objection.
Okay.
Exhibit 7 so marked.
May I publish?
Yes.
Could. Thank you. I'm showing you a third photo. Do you recognize what's in that photo?
Yes.
And could you share with the jury what's in that photo?
It's the side of John's house looking up from the driveway.
Is there anything you notice on the side of the house?
The lights. Or the ring camera.
Are you guessing, or do you know that's a?
No, I know there's one there
And how do you know that?
because I got a ring camera and I could look and see who was at my door. And then he said, "Why didn't you tell me about these things?" So he bought one.
I move to introduce this photo.
Okay,
No objection.
thank you.
That's when your neighbour steals your food. Oh. Right.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts, with the laser pointer, could you just point at the picture and show where the ring camera is?
On this screen?
Yes, please.
Whichever one you can do.
Okay. Why isn't it working?
Nope.
It's on.
Okay, well, you know what, rather than use the pointer, why don't we can you describe where you see the ring camera on that picture?
It's in where the two lights are under the top window.
Okay, thank you. We could take that down, please. How many times would you guess you had been over to his house?
I don't know. More than 50,000. I don't even know. A lot. It was weekly.
That night you told us that your husband went out to meet John at McCarthy's, a bar.
Yes, he did.
Do you remember your husband coming home that night?
Yes.
Do you have any memory of about what time he returned?
I'm guessing, but somewhere around 10:30.
So I'm not going to let you guess. No?
I don't know. It was around 10 or 10:30. I can't be exact.
Did you see him come home?
Yes.
What was the forecast for that night and the next morning?
There was a blizzard coming.
Was that part of the decision-making of going out or staying home?
Yes.
At that time, when your husband came home, did you look outside? Do you have any memory of what the weather looked like around 10:30?
I remember the snow started to fall somewhere around 12 because I remember looking out the window and I could see it starting.
And that was the beginning of the snowfall?
I believe so.
What was the weather out that night?
The weather that night, I think, was fine. It was cold, but it wasn't snowing yet.
I want to move forward ahead. At some point that night, did you go to sleep?
Yes, I did.
Did you sleep through the night, Ms. Roberts?
Yes, I did.
At some point, did you wake up?
Yes, I did.
I want you to tell us what was the reason that you woke up.
I got a phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning from Karen Reed.
Were you expecting a call?
No, I was not.
Had you ever received a call at 5 in the morning from Ms. Reed before?
No.
Share with us what happened that morning. What did you hear?
Karen called and the first thing she said was, Kerry, John's dead. And then she hung up. And then,
When she said that, did you have a chance to have a conversation with her?
no, I did not.
Describe her demeanor when she said that.
She was yelling loud enough, my name, I think it was 3 times, it might have been 2. She was yelling loud enough that she woke my husband.
Your husband was sleeping next to you?
Yes, he was.
Was she loud, yelling, screaming?
Yes, she was very loud. She was screaming.
After she said, Kerry, John's dead, did you know what she meant?
No,
And did you say this was around 5:15?
this was at 5. She called me at 5 on the dot.
After she hung up, what did you do?
I was half asleep still. I didn't know what was going on. So I started to get up and I think I tried to call her back. I know I tried to call her back, but I don't know exactly when because I was like, what? So my husband said, what was that? I said, I don't know. Something's going on. I don't know what's going on. That was Karen. And then I tried to call her back. I know I tried to call her back, but I don't know if she answered or if she called me back the next time I spoke to her.
After she called you again, did you have another discussion or did you hear her say something else the second time you spoke to her?
Yes, the second time she said, I think something happened to John. I think he got hit by a plow. He didn't come home last night. Kaylee was home. He would never leave her by herself, and I was not supposed to stay at the house last night. So I think something happened to him.
Did she say anything about drinking?
Yes, she said, we drank so much, I don't remember anything from last night. And I said, okay, where are you now? She said, I'm driving. And I said, you need to go home. Where's Kaylee? And she said, at home. I said, you need to go home and be with Kaylee. She cannot handle this, thinking, her uncle's missing. I said, you're going to get a DUI. You need to go home.
Was there anything else in the conversation that she said to you at that time?
She said, I'm going to drive to your house. Would you drive my car? And I said, yes. So at that point, I started to get dressed. I turned on the automatic car starter so it would warm up. Told my husband, I don't know what's going on. John didn't come home. And so I think my husband tried to call him and I tried to call him. And my husband said, you're not going anywhere. It's a blizzard. He's probably on somebody's couch. And I was like, I know, but she's really upset. I'm just going to go. She wants to come here. I'm going to drive her car. And then I went out to my car and sat and waited for her.
When you called John, did you get any response?
No, I did not.
As you were waiting for the defendant, did you make any other phone calls?
I did. When I was in the car, I thought to myself, well, she thinks he got hit by a plow. I'm going to call the police and see if there was any accidents or maybe something happened. They brought him in. And I spoke to the officer who said, no, nothing of that sort. I've been here all night. And then I called the Good Samaritan Hospital and Milton Hospital to see if they had anybody that was taken in an accident.
When you called the police to look for Mr. O'Keefe, did you call 911?
No, I called the non-emergency line.
Do you know if that call was recorded?
I believe so.
I'd like to introduce an exhibit.
Okay. Any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay.
Exhibit 9.
When you called the police, what was your level of worry at that point?
I wasn't super worried. I mean, he didn't come home, but they were out drinking. So I assumed, like my husband said, he's probably on somebody's couch.
The second call you had with Miss Reed, can you describe her demeanor in that second call?
She was frantic. She was frantic. I mean, she couldn't find John, so she was very worried.
How soft or loud was that phone call?
It wasn't as loud as the first one, but it wasn't a regular conversation.
With the court's permission, I'd like to play the exhibit of the call.
Okay.
Hi, friend of Kerry, calling because my friend's boyfriend did not come home last night. We were at waterfowl, and now she is calling me hysterical because she doesn't know where he is. You didn't take anybody outside the name of John O'Keefe, did you?
John O'Keefe?
Yeah, he's the Boston cop, and it would be on film,
No.
and he probably got a ride and got to someone's house, I don't know, but.
Yeah, no, we didn't lock anybody up or anything like that. And where does he live?
He lives on the second.
He lives on Meadow, Pleasant. Okay, and where's the wife home? You said your girlfriend?
With his girlfriend, yeah, they were out having drinks, and then she left, and expected him to come home at some point, and he never did.
Yeah.
And so I said to her, even my husband had been out with him earlier in the night, but then he obviously came home, and he has custody with me to nephew for this year, passed away.
Okay.
And so she's home with the niece and everybody, they're old enough to be home, and so she's nervous because she never even called me.
Yeah.
So she's like, I feel like something happened, and I said, okay. Well, so call the area hospital and you'll be back in. I personally think he probably take him out to the doctor. I don't know.
Yeah, where? Did he didn't drive last night?
No.
No. Okay. Again, it's more, it would be driven by you. You would have to, call in a couple of patients and talk to us. But I mean, as of right now, it's more, he just didn't come home last night. Is this common sometimes happen with him?
No, that's why. That's
Yeah.
he didn't tell me. That's kind of why she's more freaking out. So I think I called the area hospital and then I call Kansas police just to make sure he didn't get picked up. Like I said, he's not complete about the very old French people. If anybody couldn't pick him up.
Yeah.
Please get him up.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to the party and stuff.
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
I don't say I wasn't there, I was not here. But we didn't get any calls, anything like that. Nobody was arrested or anything like that. Alrighty.
All right, well, thank you.
All right, no problem. Good luck. See ya.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Were you in your car when you called the police station and the hospitals looking for John?
Yes, it was.
Do you know at that point whether anybody else had called the police station?
No, I don't know.
Do you know at that point if anybody else had called any hospitals?
I don't know.
How long did you wait in your driveway?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Maybe like 7 minutes, 8 minutes.
What were the conditions like out that morning?
It was bad. It was in the middle of a blizzard.
When you were outside in your car in the driveway waiting, describe the lighting conditions for us.
It was still dark out. It was 5 o'clock in the morning and it was snowing. So it was not great.
How was the visibility?
Not great. It was coming down really fast at that point.
You said that night when you went to bed, the snow just started. Had snow accumulated at that point?
No, I don't think so. It was just starting to stick.
I'm sorry, that was the night before, but at this point when you were in the driveway, had the snow accumulated?
Oh, yes.
Do you know how many inches it was?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Enough that the plows are out.
As you were waiting for the defendant, did she arrive at your house?
She did not.
What happened?
Again, I don't know if I called her or she called me, but eventually we connected on the phone and she said, I said, where are you? I'm waiting. And she said, I'm at Jen's house. And I said, Jen who? And she said, McCabe, she's going to drive my car. And I said, okay, well, listen, they don't want cars on the road because it's so bad. I'm already in my car. I'll come there to Jen's house, stay there, and we'll follow each other and we'll go back and drop your car off. Did you look in the house for John? Could he just be in the house, passed out somewhere? And she said, no, she hadn't looked in the house. So I said, okay, now I'm going to come to Jen's. We're going to take the car home, drop it off. We'll check around the house. And then I don't know what the next step at this point was. I just wanted to check the house.
At the time you directed that you were going to meet at Jen McCabe's house and then drive to John's house, was there any suggestion by the defendant where she wanted to go?
I didn't know where Jen's house was. I knew the street. I had dropping Kaylee off or picked her up a few times. So I said, stay on the phone with me so I don't know which house it is. And so when I got there, I pulled in the driveway and there was some conversation about.
Can I back you up and just ask you a little bit about the drive there? I don't
Yep.
mean to interrupt. When you left your house, you talked a little bit about the weather conditions. How long did it take you to get from your home to Jen McCabe's?
Oh, it's quick. Probably 4 minutes.
What was the driving like?
It was not good driving. That's why I didn't want two cars on the road.
Did you have any difficulty driving through that storm?
No, I mean, it was treacherous, but I was in four-wheel drive. I have an SUV.
You mentioned you didn't know exactly where Jen McCabe lived. Had you been there to drop off John's niece before?
Yes, but I didn't know which house it was because when I picked her up before, she was either getting out of the car at the driveway or waiting at the end of the driveway. So I didn't know which house it was.
I think I interrupted you, but were you telling us that as you drove to Jen McCabe's house, you were on a Bluetooth, on an open conversation with her to help with directions?
Yes, Jen and Karen were in Karen's car, and I was on the phone essentially with both of them.
Do you know what type of
And are you still there?
the defendant was driving at that time?
A Lexus SUV.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
As you drove
gonna
over
have
to Jen McCabe's home and you had some guidance finding it,
I'm going to lie
did you hear
down.
any conversations in that open
I'll
line?
reconnect to the bedroom.
Or even
I'll
any
be
statements
there. I'll just
by
be on my
the
avatar.
defendant?
I'll be back in a sec.
I remember when I pulled in behind her car in Jen's driveway, and at some point Karen said, my taillight, and I looked, and Jen she must have had the brake done because you could see that there was missing taillight.
When you say missing taillight, was it merely cracked?
No, there was a piece missing.
Could you see that as you were parked right behind the defendant's SUV or Lexus?
She must have been applying the brakes because you could see it, but there was a lot of snow.
When you saw that the taillight had a missing piece, did you say anything?
No,
Did you think anything of it?
no.
How long were you parked behind the defendant's Lexus while it was parked in Ms. McCabe's driveway?
Not long. We were just, I pulled in and then we stopped. And then the next plan, at some point in that conversation as well, or maybe on the ride, because now we're heading to John's house to drop a car off. I pulled out of the driveway, Jen pulled out, and I followed behind all the way to John's house. And at some point, Karen said, I left him at Waterfall. And I heard Jen say, no, I saw you pull up in front of my sister's.
Was anything else said about the broken taillight?
No.
You followed Ms. McCabe?
Yes,
Where did you go?
to John's house.
Did you arrive?
Yes.
I want to ask you some questions about when you arrived and what you did next.
Okay.
When you arrived at Mr. O'Keefe's home, you're in two separate cars. Who pulled into Mr. O'Keefe's driveway first?
Jen pulled Karen's car in first.
So Ms. McCabe was driving the Lexus
Correct.
and the defendant was in the passenger seat.
Yes.
After you both pulled in, tell us what happens next.
I wasn't sure if it was, at some point Karen showed us the taillight up close, but I didn't know if it was when we arrived or when we left. But we went into the house to look for John.
When the Lexus was parked by Ms. McCabe in Mr. O'Keefe's driveway, was it facing the street or facing away?
Facing where the basketball hoop is, not facing the street.
Would you like to approach?
Okay.
I'm showing you a photograph. Do you recognize what's in that photograph?
Yes, that's John's driveway. That's Karen's car on the left and John's car on the right.
Do you recognize both those cars?
Yes, I do.
Do you recognize that photo as a fair depiction of his driveway?
Yes,
Do you recognize it as a fair depiction of the motor vehicles?
yes.
Now, when you went there that night and you pulled in behind Ms. McCabe and the defendant, is there any differences between how that area looked when you pulled in as opposed to that photo?
Well, it was the early hours of the morning, so it was dark out, and there was much more snow. And there was
Other than
snow
this-
coming down.
I'm so sorry. You want to finish?
Nope.
Other than the snow and the lighting, is there any other differences?
Nope.
I'd like to introduce this as an exhibit, please.
All right, there's no objection, Mr. Jackson?
No objection.
With the court's permission, I'd like to publish.
Okay.
And to help us understand, you see on the left of the house,
Yes,
there's a motor vehicle in the middle of the driveway, but it's the vehicle to the left.
yes.
And whose vehicle is that?
That's Karen's.
Is that where it was parked that night when you went into the house?
Yes,
And the motor vehicle to the right, you recognize that?
that's John's car or SUV.
Thank you, you can take that down. I'm showing you a second photo.
Okay,
Do you recognize that photo?
yes.
What is it?
It's the back of Karen's car.
Does it look like a fair and accurate depiction of her car as it appeared that morning in the early morning hours to you?
Yes,
Do you notice anything that's distinguished in that photo?
the piece that's missing in the taillight.
Which one?
The right passenger rear.
Do you know when, I'm sorry, do you know when this photo was actually taken?
I do not.
Although you don't know when it was taken, is that a similar depiction to your memory of how it appeared that morning at 5
Yes,
or a little after 5?
yes.
I move to introduce this exhibit.
No objection.
The court's permission, I'd like to publish.
Yes.
We can take that down, please. After you arrived at Mr. O'Keefe's house, what was the plan to go inside? What were you looking to do?
To go inside and look and see if he was passed out somewhere. So we went in through the garage and I started looking. I think Jen ran upstairs to Kaylee's bedroom and I just started looking through the living room. Basement door was locked from the inside, so I knew he wasn't in the basement. And then I checked the other living room. He has a big house. Then I went to the top of the stairs to check his bedroom.
As you looked around, what was your mood?
What was my mood?
Yes, were you calm?
I mean, I was worried, so we would, at this point, Jen had already established that they went to her sister's.
Sustained.
Okay.
Jen had already,
Let
Hold
me ask the
on,
question-
Ms.
I'll
Roberts.
ask the question better. My apologies. How many rooms did you look through in John's house?
1, 2, 5 or 6.
Did you see Miss McCabe looking in rooms as well, searching?
She went upstairs when I was looking downstairs.
At some point, as you were looking, did you see the defendant?
Yes,
Was she looking with you?
she was in John's room.
What was she doing?
She was just standing there when I came up to the top of the stairs.
Did she say anything?
No,
Did she do anything?
no,
Was she searching?
I don't know. She was in the room.
What happened next?
At some point, Jen earlier had said,
Well, let's not talk about what was said. Okay. Let's
Well,
just talk about.
the plan
best
at
you
this
can,
point
your-
is
your
to go to
memory of what was
34
All
done.
right,
Fairview.
Ms. Roberts, I know that I'm just going to ask you to wait for a question
Okay.
because we can only get one person at a time. So next question, Mr. Brennan.
Again, my apologies. And so as you're looking through the house, you don't find John. What happens next?
the plan was to go back to Jen's sister's house.
Who made that plan?
Karen wanted to go back there.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. How did that conversation come up, and share with the jury what was said?
And the car ride to Meadows, Karen said, I left him at Waterfall. And Jen said, no, I saw you pull up in front of my sister's. So then Karen said, we need to go back to your sister's. And I said, no, we're going to go to Meadows and we're going to drop the car and we're going to look there. Then we'll go there if we don't find him.
When you were at the house, Meadows, John O'Keefe's house, and you didn't find him, was there any further conversation about what the next steps would be?
I said, let's go. He's not here. But I didn't know where Jen's sister lived. So we got into the car. Jen was in the passenger seat. I was driving my car. Karen was in the back seat. And Jen was giving directions.
Did you begin your way towards Meadows?
Yes.
And it was Ms. McCabe who was giving directions?
Yes.
As you began driving to head towards Meadows, in addition to trying to drive, were you doing anything like looking or searching?
Yeah. We were looking on both sides of the road. I was looking on both sides of the road in case he was walking home.
Did you see Ms. McCabe searching?
Yes, she was looking out as well.
Describe a little detail about what you saw Ms. McCabe doing.
She was looking out the window as we were driving. So was I, as I was driving.
And where was the defendant during that time?
She was in the back seat.
Was there any conversation, comments, statements?
Well, she would be in the back seat, and then she would be in between Jen and I, in the back seat, and then in between Jen and I. She was just very frantic.
Okay. Was she saying anything?
There was conversation on the way there.
Okay. Was she looking as well? Did you see her looking out the windows like you and Jen?
I don't know if she was because she was in the back seat.
Okay. As you drove to Meadows, what was the visibility? The same or better or worse?
No, it was poor.
Did you make your way towards Meadows?
I did.
As you finally got to Meadows, was the house on your left side, your side, or on the other side?
Are you talking about Fairview or Meadows?
I'm sorry, Fairview.
Okay. The Fairview house came up on the left-hand side.
Before you got to the house, is there a tree line between that house and the house before it?
Yes. There's a cluster of trees and bushes.
All right, take us back. I want to talk about that morning. As you're driving and approaching Fairview, tell us what you hear, what you see, what's happening.
Jen's giving directions, and it was really bad driving. I was white knuckling because it was getting slippery. Karen wouldn't put on her seatbelt, so because she was in between us again the whole ride, and then sitting back. But she was worried because we weren't finding John.
Were you having words?
Yes.
Tell us.
I said to Jen, where are we heading? And she said, my sister lives on Fairview. And I said, where is that? She said, off of Chapman. I said, oh, okay, near Spring Lane. At some point, Bella's mom came up.
Tell me what that means.
I didn't know who it was, but it was one of Kaylee's friends, Bella's mom. Well, the directions, at some point, Karen was talking about Bella's mom to Jen, saying she never liked me. I didn't know who this woman was that they were talking about. But apparently, Bella's mom lived near where Jen's sister lived on Fairview.
Did you learn any more about the relevance of Bella's mom?
No. Oh, well, I think John had dated her.
Objection.
I'm going to allow it.
So as you approach Fairview, tell us what happens.
As we approached Fairview at the house. You mean the house or the street?
Yes, the house.
The house. Jen said, my sister's house is right up here. And I said, okay. And as we approached the house, Karen from the back seat is now screaming, there he is, let me the F out of this car. And she's out kicking the back door to get out.
When you heard the defendant scream, there he is, and started kicking the car door, did you see anything?
I did not.
Did you see anybody?
I did not.
Did you look?
I looked.
Was there anything that impeded your ability to see far?
No, it was just snow.
How far could you see when she was yelling, there he is?
How far could I see?
Yes.
I mean, the visibility wasn't great.
Okay. Was she pointing or giving any direction?
No, she just said, there he is.
Okay. What happens next?
And then I unlocked the car. I looked over, I didn't see anything, and I unlocked it so she could get out of the back seat. I looked at Jen and I said, she's crazy. And then I turned around and watched, and she ran over to a bound of snow.
when she started running, before she got anywhere, did you see anything at that point?
I did not.
Were you looking?
I was looking. She said, there he is. So I'm looking around to see where he is.
And you could see nothing?
I did not.
Did you see her run around or directly?
She ran right over to the mound of snow.
Could you tell what the mound of snow was from the car?
Once she got to it, yes, it was. Once she got to it, you could tell it was a mound of snow that was the length of a body.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to stop you there, Mr. Brennan. I need to see Council at
All righty then. Can you hear me again?
You got it?
Yep.
Yay.
Mr. Roberts, I'll remind you, you're still under oath. You'll take the stand.
Thank you. Good morning.
Oh, she's a talker, that
Whenever
one.
you're ready, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mrs. Roberts.
Good morning.
Yesterday, you told us a little bit about when you went into John's home at Meadows to look for him.
Yes,
And I recall you said that you did not see him there.
correct.
At some point, you left?
Correct.
When you went into Meadows, who did you go into Meadows with?
Karen and Jen McCabe.
Have you ever seen any video from a ring camera depicting you and the defendant and Miss McCabe going into the home?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Actually, I've moved to introduce a ring video. It has certification, and then a smaller clip of that ring video if there's no objection.
Did you say if there's no objection or there is no?
If there's no objection. There's no objection. May I introduce Your Honor?
Sure.
Exhibits 12A and 12B.
Thank you. And one final. Madam.
Let's see.
It's a clip. 12C would be just fine. Thank you. Your Honor, if I may note, 12A is the ring video from 12 Meadows. 12B is the certification from Ring. And 12C is a clip of a piece, a portion of 12A.
That's accurate. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. With the court's permission, I'd like to play 12C for the jury.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it was
Ms.
snowing.
Roberts, you've seen that video before?
Hey?
Yes, I have.
It
So it
no,
was
Is that
snowing.
you and the defendant and Ms. McCabe going into Meadows?
Yes, it is.
I haven't heard one.
When you came
what
out
if
of
any?
Meadows, did you have a chance again to look at the defendant's tail light on her Lexus?
Yes, when we left the house, she pointed it out to me.
Did you stop and get a closer look?
Yes, I did.
I want you to describe to the jury your best memory of what it looked like.
Karen pointed out and said, look, my taillight. And she said, do you think I hit him? And I said, no, I don't think you hit him. What are you talking about? Let's just go find him. But the taillight itself, the piece was missing. And as you got closer, there's a metal sort of square, and one of the pieces was sort of sticking out. And I only remember it because I thought if someone walks by that, they're going to catch their jacket on it.
How long of a time did you have to actually look at the taillight?
Under a minute.
How close were you to the taillight when you looked at it?
I was in front of it. I could see.
And when you talked about the taillight, you said a piece was missing. Is this the left side or the right side of the Lexus that you saw the piece of the taillight missing?
It was the right side, so it was the passenger taillight.
May I approach?
Yes.
Should I remain, Your Honor?
Sure.
Thank you. May I recognize what is in that photo?
That is Karen's SUV.
Is it similar or a fair and accurate depiction of how you saw the vehicle that morning?
Without the snow, I can't be positive, but this square piece was missing, as is in this picture.
The photograph you look at is not the car in the snow in the driveway the day you saw it.
Correct.
Putting that aside, is that a fair and accurate depiction of the damage that you saw to the right rear taillight of Ms. Reed's car that morning?
Yes.
I move to introduce this as an exhibit, please.
Any objection?
No objection.
Exhibit 13.
Thank you. With the court's permission, I'd like to publish Exhibit 13.
Nope. Thank you, Tanya.
Ms. Roberts, I'm going to ask you to take a look at the photo that you just described. Do you see the white area in that photograph?
Yes.
Is that where the taillight had missing part?
Yes.
And where was the metal in relation to that white part that you see?
If you look at the white part, it's the upper left. It's sort of like a rectangle, but it's vertical, sort of.
And that's the metal part that you were concerned about?
Yes, one of the
So
side. It's almost like an encased.
hang on. That bit there, she's talking about, I think. Can you see my cursor?
Mm-hmm.
This is new testimony.
But the right side, I think it was the right side, was sticking out a little bit, like out from the car toward me.
Did you express any concern about the metal sticking out?
Yes, because I thought at that height it could clip someone's coat or something if they were walking by.
You mentioned the defendant asked you if you thought she hit somebody.
Correct.
How many times did she ask you that?
She asked me that in the driveway. How many times? She said, "Do you think I hit him? Do you think I hit him?" And my answer was, "No, I don't think you hit him. I'm sure you hit something because your taillight's broken, but I don't think you hit him. Why would I think that?"
Did you have any reason to think at that point that she hit anybody?
No.
Did she ever repeat that phrase or question in the same or similar manner again that night?
She did at the scene where we found John.
Before or after you found John?
After we found John.
Okay, so we'll get to that then. Could we please take that picture down, Ms. Gilman? How far of a ride is it from Meadows to Fairview?
I don't know,
6 minutes, I
maybe 8 minutes.
So when you left John's house at Meadows and you traveled to Fairview, you said you were driving.
Yes.
Was there any comments or conversation from the defendant on that ride?
There was talk of Bella's mom, who lived near Jen's sister. There was talk, and I said, "Where is Fairview?" And Jen said, "It's off of Chapman," so it was near Spring Lane. And I knew of somebody previously that John had dated on Spring Lane, so I brought it up thinking, could he have gone there if he was walking home? I don't know. I didn't know where he was or why he was missing.
Describe the mood in the car.
Well, it was scary driving, and Karen was, frantic, and she was yelling. I don't even remember at this point what she was yelling, but she was yelling. She had an elevated voice. She would be in between us while I was driving, and she would sit back in the back seat and be in between us.
Did you have any words with Miss Reed?
I told her to shut up several times because I was trying to drive and I couldn't concentrate. I told her to sit back and buckle up because it was bad driving. I didn't want to get into an accident and her not have a seatbelt on.
How often was the yelling on the way to Fairview?
Oh, several times. It was like you couldn't control her. And I was trying to drive in a blizzard.
You went down Spring Road before you get to Fairview?
No, Spring Lane is before Fairview off of Chapman.
And did anything remarkable happen on Spring Lane?
I'm sorry?
Anything remarkable happen on Spring Lane?
No.
More of the same?
Yes,
Now, you mentioned yesterday that when you got to Fairview, the defendant began kicking your door.
yes,
When you looked out, you didn't see anything.
I did not.
And at some point, you ran over to where Miss Reed was.
Yes.
Tell us what your first observations are when you get close to the defendant.
Well, it was a shape of a body, like the length of a body, shape of a body. She ran over and I said, oh my God. I jumped out of the car. I ran over and she was lifting up his shirt to try and warm him, I guess. So I went over to his head and I began to dig his head out of the snow.
Can you take us back and describe for us what you're seeing?
His body was completely covered, but his head was completely covered. So I started to dig around his face and his eyes, and his left eye was fine, but his right eye looked like it was huge, like he had something happen to it. And after that, I told Karen to get off him. We were going to start CPR. I had been certified at work through the American Red Cross, so I knew chest compressions were more important. So I started to do chest compressions, and I yelled to Jen and told her to call 911. Karen was trying to do mouth to mouth. I don't know if she knew what she was doing, but I knew chest compressions were more important, so I concentrated on that. I yelled for Jen. I carry blankets. I have 2 kids, so I carry blankets in the car. So I yelled to Jen to get the blankets. I don't know what I thought I was doing with blankets, but I wrapped them around his head, just thinking we're trying to warm him up. He was covered in snow.
When you first ran over, you mentioned that his head was covered in snow. Was his head fully covered in snow?
Yes.
When you looked down, could you see who it was at first?
At first, no. I had to dig him out.
When is it that you realized that this was your friend John?
When I cleared the snow off his face.
Did you feel his skin?
Did I feel what?
His skin.
Yes.
Okay. And could you tell us how it felt?
It was cold. Like he had been there in the elements for a while.
You mentioned that his head was covered with snow before you brushed off the snow. Was other parts of his body still covered in snow?
Yes.
Can you share with us what you saw?
His legs were covered. His arms were by his side. He was on his back. Karen had lifted up his shirt, so now his shirt was down, but I was doing chest compressions so you could see his clothing. He had blood coming out of his nose and his mouth. And when I put the baby blankets under the back of him, there was blood on the blanket, so I think he had a cut on the back of his head.
Was the blood from his nose and mouth frozen or running?
I don't think it was running. It was not gushing.
You said that you brushed off the snow from John's face.
Yes.
Did you brush it off from both sides?
Yes.
Did you brush it off to the extent that you uncovered his entire face and head?
Yes.
So did you have gloves on?
No.
Bare hands?
Yes.
And that's how you felt the temperature of his skin?
Yes.
When you brushed off both sides of his face, did you ever feel any pieces of glass sticking out of his face?
No.
Did you ever see any pieces of glass sticking out of his face?
I did not.
How long did you give chest compressions for to Mr. O'Keefe?
Oh, I can't be sure. I would say 4 minutes, 5 minutes while we were waiting for the EMTs. I had Jen take over at one point. And then the EMTs came. So however long it took for them to get to us, 6 minutes.
When you were trying to save your friend John, did the defendant say anything?
She was just running around screaming, Kerry, Kerry, Jen, Kerry, Jen.
Was anything said at that point about her taillight?
About what?
Her taillight.
No, when the EMTs were around and they were working on the body, she was running around and saying, did I hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead? Is he dead?
When you were waiting for the police and EMTs, just briefly, what was the temperature like and the visibility like?
The temperature was freezing because I remember at one point I couldn't feel my knees, which is why I had Jen take over. And the wind was still whipping and the snow was still coming down.
At some point, did help arrive?
Yes, they did.
And when help arrived, what did you do?
I stood back and watched them work on him.
Did you see first responders trying to give first aid to Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
How long were you outside for that morning?
At that point,
Well, the entire morning.
maybe a half hour.
When the first responders were trying to save John, what else were you doing?
I was calling my husband. I called my mother. When they put him in the back of the ambulance, I then made a call to Mrs. O'Keefe. I think I called Mr. O'Keefe first, but he didn't answer. So I called Mrs. O'Keefe and told her John had been in an accident. And she screamed, "I can't do this again."
What did you do after that phone call?
The police put Jen and Karen in the back of a cruiser. And I was looking in the ambulance to see what was going on with my friend. So I was standing outside of the cruiser. They were inside. I was standing outside just watching. And Karen was saying, is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? And I said, no, they're working on him. I can see tubes moving. I can see them moving. If he was dead, they wouldn't be working on him. She grabbed the front of my shirt and said, are they working on him? And I said, yes, they're working on him. At this point, I think I was in shock. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't think he was dead. I thought they could save him. I knew he was in the ambulance with the EMTs, and I was just hopeful that they were going to be able to do more than I could.
You said that at one point, Ms. McCabe and the defendant were in a car, and then you mentioned at some point the defendant grabbed you. Did she grab you when she was in the car or out of the car?
She was in the car. I was outside of the car.
At some point, did the defendant, Ms. McCabe, get out of the car?
Yes.
Did you go over to the ambulance before it left?
Did I go over to the ambulance?
Before it left?
No.
Did you watch?
Yes.
At some point, did you see the defendant get out of the car, the police cruiser?
No, I didn't see them get out, but they were out at one point.
They were what?
They were out of the vehicle, but I didn't watch them get out. I was watching the ambulance.
At some point, you saw them out?
Yes.
And were they near you when you were watching the ambulance?
Did what?
Were they near you when you were watching the ambulance?
I don't know.
No.
I wasn't concentrating on either one of them. I was concentrating on my friend in the ambulance.
When you were trying to save Mr. O'Keefe, did you ever see any signs of life?
I did not. And I checked his pulse. No, I did not.
After the ambulance took John to the hospital, tell us what you do next.
I left. I told Mrs. O'Keefe, I said, I'm going to come get you. She said, well, I'm going to have Braintree Police take me to the hospital, which was in Brockton. And I said, they're not going to take you to Brockton. I will come get you because neither of their cars had four-wheel drive. So I asked if I could leave, and they said, give me your number and we'll follow up with you. And I took Karen with me. We drove down the street. At some point, she was on the phone with Erin O'Keefe, John's sister-in-law, and Karen was saying, I think he's dead. I think he's dead. I grabbed the phone and I said, I don't think he's dead. He's in an ambulance. He's been in an accident. At this point, I didn't know what was going to happen. At some point in the car, as we're driving, she was on the phone with her mother. And I think when we were driving, we got all the way to the elementary school. And Karen said to me, if anything happens to John, I'm going to kill myself. You're going to have to take care of the kids. And I said, nobody's dying. Nobody's killing themselves. Let's not think about that. And then one of the officers called me and said, do you have Karen Reed with you? And I said, yes. And he said, could you please turn around and bring her back? Her parents are saying that she's suicidal, so we're going to take her to the hospital and section her. I said, okay. I didn't get far, so I turned around, went back. At some point, she was on the phone with her mother, and I got on the phone with her mother and said, I'm going to be heading to the hospital. Let me give you my phone number. It's the same hospital John's at. I'm assuming they're going to the same. That's where Canton takes everybody. And her mother said, please make sure that they don't let her have her bag. There are things in her bag, medicine I don't want her to have. So I said, okay, I will. So we got back to the house, and she got in the ambulance, and one of the EMTs asked me for her phone. So I handed that over, and I said, the mother wants to make sure that she does not have her purse because there's medication in there that they don't want her to have.
Did you see the defendant leave with medical personnel?
Yes, I did.
Before we move forward, I want to step back for just a moment. Did you see when the medical personnel, the first responders, lifted John from the ground and then put him on a bed?
Yes.
Shortly after they moved John from the ground and brought him to the bed to bring him to the ambulance, did you go back to where John lay when you first saw him?
Yes, I did.
Why did you go back to the spot where John was lying when you first saw him?
When they lifted him up, there was grass underneath him, and I could see his phone. So I went over and picked up the phone and the 2 baby blankets that were left on the ground.
So let me ask you, when you went back to where John was lying on the ground, you said you saw grass. There was not snow under him?
No, there was not.
Was there many inches of snow around that area?
Yes.
But none where he was lying under him? You said you picked up a couple of items?
Yes.
Could you repeat that again, what you picked up?
I picked up John's phone and 2 blankets, the blankets that I had Jen get out of the car.
What did you do with John's phone when you picked it up from the ground?
I put it in my pocket and gave it to a first responder when they came over, or I handed it off to a first responder.
And the blankets you picked up, were they in the ground area or on snow as well?
They were, I don't remember.
Okay. How long after you put the phone in your pocket, do you remember when you gave it to a first responder, how long you had it for?
I don't remember.
Do you remember the time that you picked up the phone?
I do not.
Have you seen video of that event?
Yes.
And does that video have times when you went over and picked up that phone?
Yes, but I don't remember, somewhere around 6:12, 6:19.
And you don't know how long you kept it in your pocket before, until you gave it to a first responder?
I do not.
At some point, did you get in your car during that morning before you left and drove from the scene?
Yes.
Do you know if John's phone was still in your pocket when you first got into your car?
I don't know.
Was your car heated that morning? Did you keep
Yes.
it running?
Yes.
And was the heat on
I think
it?
I kept it running the whole time. I don't even think I shut it off.
I see. I want to now step forward to where you left us when you said that you had spoken to John's mother, Peggy. And did you decide what you were going to do next?
After I dropped Karen back off at 34 Fairview to get in the ambulance, I then made my way to Braintree. Barely. I was on the highway. I was the only one on the highway. I spun out a couple times.
Can you describe
right
what you mean by spun out?
Oh, the driving was, no one else was on the road. The driving was horrible. So I spun out almost at the Braintree exit to get to their house. And then I got to the O'Keefe's house and I said, we are not taking the highway back to Brockton. We're going back roads, which is a much longer way, but there's no way I was putting us in the car on that treacherous.
When you went to the O'Keefe's house, you mean Peggy O'Keefe and John O'Keefe Sr.'s house?
Yes,
That's-
John's parents.
That's different than Meadows Road.
Correct.
When you got to the home, did you go in?
Yes, for a second. They were ready and waiting for me. They wanted to get to the hospital.
When you say they, can you tell us who was waiting for you?
John's parents, Mr. and Mrs. O'Keefe, were waiting.
What happens next?
Mr. O'Keefe said something about a Dr. Rice and that they were trying to warm John up. We got into the car. Mr. O'Keefe got in my passenger seat. Mrs. O'Keefe got in the back seat. Mrs. O'Keefe's niece worked at Good Samaritan, so we were trying to get in touch with her to see if we were going to be allowed in because there was still COVID restrictions. John's brother was already on his way there. And Mr. O'Keefe at some point said, he's gone, Peg. And he slammed his hands on the dashboard. But they didn't actually know if he was gone yet. At one point, Karen called me from the ambulance. And on the phone, Mrs. O'Keefe said, Karen, what happened? And she said, I left him at a party. And Mrs. O'Keefe said, and you just left him And Mr. O'Keefe said, all right, that's enough. She's been through enough. Then we hung up with her. I said, we're on our way to the hospital.
Let me ask you a question. When the defendant said that she left him, did she say whether she left him outside or inside?
No,
Was the question, follow-up question, never asked?
no,
Okay. Was there any other conversation with the defendant at that point?
not in the car, but when I got to the hospital, she called me multiple times from the hospital room.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
How long did it take for you and the O'Keefes to get to the hospital?
I would say maybe 45 minutes to an hour.
Share with us the mood in that car.
I think I was in shock, and I think they were in shock. There wasn't, other than talking to Mrs. O'Keefe's niece, trying to find out if we could go in for COVID reasons, there wasn't much talk.
When you finally get to the hospital, take us through your first steps. What happens?
We finally get to the hospital. We walked in. Paul, John's brother, was there. We went over to him, and then Susanna, Mrs. O'Keefe's niece, came out from her office and offered to take me to the bathroom to wash up because I had blood all over my hands. So I went into the bathroom, and I asked her afterwards if she could take me to the chapel so I could say a prayer. So she did. She took me to the chapel, and then when I came out, she took me into her office and explained to me that a Dr. Rice was going to come talk to the family and take them into an office and talk to the family, and then the family would be able to go see John.
Did you get a chance to see John?
I did.
Would you be willing to tell us a little bit about what you saw?
Objection.
I waited in the waiting area. I spoke to my mom. Phone calls were coming in because people had heard what happened. And Mrs. O'Keefe, the family went in to see Dr. Rice. I watched them go in. I watched them walk down a hallway. And then when they came back out, Mrs. O'Keefe told me he was gone.
Strike that statement.
Without telling us what anybody said to you, please just share with us what you saw.
I went into the hospital room, and John was in a neck brace. At this point, there was a trail of blood going toward the gurney or the bed that he was on. This time, both eyes were filled with blood. They looked like raccoons. That's the only way to describe it. I thought he was going to look better seeing him in the hospital because he had been worked on, but he was not. There was much more blood.
Were there any other ways that John looked different in the hospital? First brushed the snow off his face in the front of Fairview?
When I brushed the snow off his face, his left eye was fine. It had an ice cube on it that I pulled off, but the right eye was out to here, like a golf ball. When I got to the hospital, both eyes were swollen with, it looked like blood. They looked purple.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
May I quickly approach sidebar?
Okay.
Yeah.